You want to choose a topic that's manageable, something that you can actually, like if you want to write about uh, why deontological ethics is correct, and you have to do that in 1,000 words, that would be quite difficult. But if you choose a much smaller component within that question, you could probably answer that in a much smaller amount. So first thing you want to do is you want to make sure it's something you're interested in. Second thing you want to do is make sure that you can actually accomplish what you set out to do and the limits that you have. So after you choose your topic, the next thing you want to do is you want to read. You want to read up on the literature a bit on that. As I said, we're going to be doing a lot of the reading that you'll be choosing paper topics for in this class. We'll be doing actually the reading in class, so you'll already have a portion of that done. But you're probably going to want to read at least an article or two on your topic to make sure that what you're saying is consistent with what other people are thinking, or if other people have covered what you're thinking, how you would respond to that, because there are always competing views on these things. Yeah, and then after you've chosen a topic you're interested in and you've read the literature, I want you to take a clear position. I want you to have a thesis statement, and you say this is the conclusion that I'm going to have, and then make an argument, make a philosophical argument for that conclusion. The structure is pretty similar. I mean, you obviously you're going to have an introduction where you're going to motivate your topic. You're going to say why people. I mean, you always need to start with why. Why are people going to be interested in this topic? So why am I writing on this topic? Why is it relevant? You want to get some background, define your terms, things like that, and then you want to state your thesis statement. The body of the paper should be the argument that you're making. After you make your argument, you want to consider objections, and then you want to try to reply to those objections, and then you're going to conclude and restate your thesis and maybe a brief overview of your argument and the objections. Audience, as it says in Vaughn's book, don't assume that you're writing to a philosophical, somebody with a background in philosophy. Assume that you're writing for somebody who is an intelligent person but may not be well versed in philosophy. And the reason that you're doing that is because you're trying to state your position as clearly as possible. And what I'm looking for as an instructor is I'm looking to make sure that you understood the topics, and if you can explain those topics, Einstein had a saying that says if you can't explain something to your grandmother, you don't understand it. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I mean, obviously, don't be too basic. I mean, you want to maintain some sophistication in your argument, but don't write like you're trying to submit to a philosophical journal or something like that just yet. Maybe if you become a graduate student, you can do that. Some specific tips. It's always a good idea when you're writing a paper to actually, if you can actually like mentally imagine somebody who has the characteristics that you're looking for, somebody who may have taken 1 or 2 classes in philosophy that's philosophically curious, write it specifically to that person. It helps make the paper more concrete. Always write in first person. I think this, I'm going to make this argument, etc. Don't go into third person. This author thinks this, etc. And then revise your paper. You need to start early. I mean, I know it's easy to put it off to the last minute, but don't do that. Okay, so that was week 2. Week 3, this past week, we talked about some basic metaphysical questions. And the first article that we looked at was Derek Parfit's Why Anything, Why This? And there were 2 questions in his article that go along with that title of the essay, Why Anything, Why This? The first question is, why does something exist rather than nothing? And in order to answer that question, he posits a couple of potential answers. One of the first things that he looks at is he looks at a couple of different causal answers. And that's when I brought up the principle of sufficient reason, which is an important principle in philosophy, and that just essentially says that every effect has a cause. So he follows that reasoning, and he says that some people will argue for an infinite regress, which essentially says there's no beginning and there's been an infinite chain, starting with now, going all the way back, and just never ending. That's, some people find that a bit unsatisfying, but that's an argument that some people make. Another argument that he gives for the existence of the universe, why something rather than nothing, is the Big Bang. And with quantum mechanics, quantum theory, the Big Bang says essentially that something popped out of nothing, and quantum theory actually says that that's possible. So there was nothing in the beginning, and then this molecule sort of popped into existence and expanded into the universe that we have now. So, and then another thing that he considers at the beginning of the paper is, look, we just can't answer this question. Why does anything exist rather than nothing? But yet he also argues that, much like Russell, he says that the contemplation of the universe is sublime, and it's something that we should do. And he also says that, look, by asking these questions, we understand more about the universe. Even if we can't answer the ultimate question of why this universe exists, we have a much more sophisticated understanding of the nature of the universe and our planet and where we live than we did before we started asking these questions. So there's some real value to it. So then he gets into the argument, or the question of why does this particular universe obtain? And the first thing he does, he starts off with his probability argument. His probability argument essentially says, the probability of life occurring, of the conditions of the universe being such that they allow life to exist, are 1 in a billion billion. So essentially his argument is, if there's a 1 in a billion billion chance of something obtaining, and that thing obtains, then it is likely not a coincidence. Actually, there must be some sort of explanation for that. And then he goes through several different theories, and he tries to find, a suitable explanation for this fact. One of the things he considers is the many worlds hypothesis, and that was the idea that, there could be many universes out there, many big bangs and things like that, where essentially they have the same laws of nature that we have. The conditions are basically the same. It's not all possible worlds. He also considers the all possible worlds thesis, and the argument is just that, if you have, multiple Big Bang theories with essentially the same, laws of nature, then the likelihood of getting a universe with the conditions that support life are much more likely. So that was one possibility that he considers.